Hello and welcome. Today we are going to make this precious makeup bag, everything bag. You could use it for whatever you wanted to use it for. It is fully lined. It has this adorable flannel lining inside. It is completely, all the seams are completely closed. It's boxed enough to make it tall enough and deep enough for whatever you might want to put in there. Toiletries, makeup, maybe a couple of diapers and some wipes if you're running out. And it's a fairly beginner-friendly project. I think that if you are ready to practice a little bit of quilting, maybe practice putting in a zipper and boxing the corners on this adorable bag, then you're in the right place. Let's get started. So now we have all of our pieces cut out and we're ready to start putting them together. We have our zipper, which will be cut later. We have two pieces of our outer fabric that are going to be 9.5 across by 15 inches long. We also have two pieces of, I would call this medium weight fusible fleece interfacing that are cut 16 inches by 10 inches, just so you have a little bit of leftover around the edges as you quilt it. We also have two pieces of our lining that are also cut 9.5 inches by 15 inches. We have one tab. This is a zipper tab pull that I don't usually even measure, but I'm gonna say it's probably 6 inches long by maybe 2 inches wide. We're gonna cut this down. We'll show you how we use this later. And then two of the zipper tabs, that is these little pieces on the end, and these are 3.5 inch squares. This is the zipper tab pull that I was talking about that we'll be putting together later. So after we have everything cut out, the next step is going to be to take these interfacing pieces over to the iron and just iron them on there. Now we're getting ready to iron the interfacing onto the back of our outer fabric. And basically what we want to do is we want to go around. We're not really ironing it. We're just placing this iron around the edge for about 8 to 10 seconds in each position. If you have a really thick type of fabric, for example, duck cloth, some of the canvases that you might want to use for these cute little bags, in those cases you may need to hold it a little bit longer than 8 to 10 seconds. But basically all we're doing is trying to adhere in this case, this cotton fabric down to the interfacing. So we're going to do that for both pieces, and then they'll be ready to quilt. The next thing we're going to do while we're already over here at the ironing board is we're going to take our 3.5 by 3.5 inch zipper tabs, and we're going to, it doesn't matter which way you do them because they are squares, we're going to take it and we're going to fold the side in just about 1/4 inch, just enough where you can fold it over, but not enough so that we're taking up too much of the square itself. We're just going to fold that over there, press it for a few seconds. My fabric is flannel, so I have to be a little more careful with not burning it too much with this very powerful little iron. I don't know if you've used the Aliso irons, but boy, are they cool. They are very powerful. So once we fold it in each one of the sides, then we're going to fold it over on itself, get it as even as we can, because this is one of those times where we're letting the iron do some of our sewing, which is really cool. And then we're just going to press it like that. We're going to do that with both pieces. All right, so now we're ready to sew up our tabs. These are the little zipper tabs. We've ironed them. We've taken both sides and we folded them in about 1/4 of an inch, and then we folded it over on itself. And now we're just going to stitch down this side and down this side. Now that's going to leave raw edges here and here, but we'll be taking care of those later. So let's just go ahead, and I'm setting it at about 3 on the stitch length. And just go ahead and sew it right down that side. And then we'll do the same on the other side. Okay, and we'll do that with both pieces, and then our tabs are ready to go. They'll just be folded over like this and put into our bag to make our final tabs in our piece. Now we're ready to do a little bit of quilting on our outer pieces. You can really quilt it any way you want. In the case of this kind of pattern, I will probably quilt it maybe every 2 inches across. But you could do like a checkerboard, crosshatch, I believe it's called, quilting. You could do it at a diagonal, and I actually really like using a diagonal. It's the one that I probably use the most often. Or, like I said, you could do it every couple of inches, every inch, every 2 inch, even every 3 inches, just to quilt it. And it's something that gives it a little bit more character and a little bit more finished look. What I'm doing is I'm going to set my stitch almost to 4, the stitch length, and I'm probably going to use this handy dandy little laser light. That what you do is you stitch a line, and then once you had stitched the line, you decide how far apart you want your lines to be. And then once you've stitched a line, you actually put the laser on the line that you've stitched and try to keep it straight. So let me see if I can show you what I mean. We'll just stitch the first line. All right, now we're ready to lay that stitching all the way over there on that laser light, and find our way back up here to the beginning where we started. And then as I'm stitching over here, all I'm doing is looking over here to make sure that I'm keeping it on that line, and that's making me stitch a straight line even without even looking at the line that I'm actually stitching. And I'm not very good at straight lines, so this is a perfect way for me to do my quilting. I need to stabilize my machine. It bounces a lot. I need to get a little pad so it doesn't bounce as much when I'm stitching. But that's how we're going to do the quilting. So now we have both of our outer pieces quilted. And you can see that it kind of gives it a nice finished look, and you can see the way that it's quilted by looking at the other side of it as well. Now we're ready to start putting our bag together and putting the zipper on it. And if you haven't ever done a zipper, don't be afraid. They are a little bit scary at first, but once someone shows you how to do it, I feel like it gets easier each time you do it. So what we're going to do when you're attaching a zipper to a bag that has a lining, this is the way I do it every single time. I'm going to lay one of my outer pieces down pretty side up, and you'll notice that it's longer going across ways, and then I've got the shorter side going up and down. Then I'm going to take my zipper, and as I told you before, I like to always use a zipper that's much longer than my piece. That way I don't ever have to worry about sewing around this head. And even if you do have to sew around it, it's not that hard. But especially if you're using one of these wider zippers like this one. So we're going to take the zipper and we're going to lay it pretty side down at the top of our outer piece. So what you'll notice is the zipper pull part is underneath where you can't see it. You'll also notice that there's a few inches on both ends. This zipper is way longer than what I need for it to be. And then once I get that on there, I can take just a few clips to hold it there. I made sure that I've got it even all the way across this top part. And once I have those clips in place, now I'm going to take one of my lining pieces, and remember our lining pieces are these cute little flannel pieces. I'm going to take one of them and I'm going to lay it pretty side down. So the pretty side is facing down toward the outer layer of the bag. And what I'm going to do when I lay it down here, I'm going to make sure that I've got it lined up across the top. And I'm also making sure that I have it lined up down both of the sides. Just like that. And then I'm going to move my little clips so that they include our lining piece as well. And you might want to, I will tell you, I used way more clips when I first was sewing. You might want to add a few more clips than I do now. In fact, I think I've gotten to the point now where if I can not clip it, I don't. All right, so we're going to take this over to the machine and we're going to stitch it all along here. I'm actually going to put my presser foot up against the zipper here, and I'm just going to stitch a line all the way down there. Now, you could put a zipper foot on your machine. I think when you're using one of these wider zippers, you really don't need one, at least not with my machine. So let's take it over there, let's stitch it on, and then we'll come back and see what we do next. This is the way I do my zipper. I take the zipper and I lay it on my machine, but my presser foot is way back here before the bag really starts. Because I've got this big long zipper, I might as well start all the way over there. So I'm starting over there. I've also got the edge of my presser foot up against the plastic part of these teeth. I've set my length to just about 3. I could probably go a little bit smaller and it would still be fine. And I'm just going to start there. I like to go nice and slow because you want to be exact. You want all of these layers to line up. So this is not the time to speed through it until we get all the way down to the end. All right, so now we have stitched the first part of our zipper on. We're going to bring it back over here and we're going to look at what it looks like. We're going to take it, hold it up by the zipper, and what you'll see is the front is your outer fabric, and on the other side you've got your lining fabric. So if you do that, then you know you did something right. So the next thing we're going to do is we're just going to lay it out flat, and again I've laid it so that pretty part of the zipper, it's got the zipper pull on top, is on top, and if we look on the bottom here, we can see our lining fabric, pretty side down. Pretty side of the outer fabric is up. The next thing we want to do is we want to take this over to the iron and we're going to press all along this line. And then after we have pressed that down, we're going to go over to the sewing machine and we're actually going to stitch. We're going to open our stitch up a little bit, make it more like a top stitch, and we're going to stitch right along here, just even less than 1/8 of an inch all along there. And what that does, it holds the pieces in place, but it also assures that the lining pieces are away from the teeth. So here's the teeth, And here is the lining piece. And that little stitch that you're gonna put in is gonna hold it that way, so that when you go to use this zipper, it won't get stuck in the lining. If you've ever had a bag that did that, you wish that they had learned to do this step. So we're gonna go to the iron first, we're gonna press it down, and then we're gonna top stitch it right along that seam right there. All right, so we're back now. We have put a top stitch in all along the zipper, and you'll see that that top stitch is holding that lining away from these zipper teeth. I did forget to mention that while you are ironing, you want to be careful that you don't put your iron too close to these plastic teeth because they could melt it. But now we're halfway finished with the zipper. So now we're going to take our other outer piece, that's going to be this guy, and we're going to lay it pretty side up. We're going to take our other piece, the one that looks like this that we already have the zipper on, and we're going to lay it pretty side down. So the pretty sides are facing each other. We're going to line it up not only across the top. So what I'm doing across the top is I'm lining it up so that the zipper is lined up with the top of that other outer fabric. And I'm also making sure that I've lined it up down the sides. So we've got the lining in line with the outer fabric on both sides. And then we're going to put a few clips in there. And we're going to add the final piece. The final piece will be the other lining, and we're going to put it down pretty side down. So pretty sides are facing each other again for the lining. So that happens for the lining, and pretty sides are facing each other for the outer fabric as well. So when we put the other lining on there, again, we're going to take it all the way up to the top, line it up against the top, move that clip, making sure that we've got it lined up down the sides as well. You want to take your time because putting in the zipper is key, that it's in there straight in order for your bag to look nice and to work properly when you're finished. So I'm going to put a few more clips in there. I'm going to take it to the machine, put my stitch back down to just below 3, and I'm going to stitch just like I did the other half. You'll notice that now the zipper pull part is over here on the other side of the bag. All right, so now we're ready to take it to the machine, stitch it on, and then we'll see what we need to do next. So now we've stitched on the other part of the zipper, and this is what it's looking like now. We've got the zipper in the middle. We've got our pretty outer piece, which I'm loving this fabric, on both sides of the zipper. And if we flip it over, we've got our lining on both sides on the inside. But what we haven't done yet is we haven't stitched this side down with the top stitch like we did that one. So we're going to pull it down as taut as we can get it, take it over to the ironing machine, or over to the iron, and we're going to iron all along here. And then we'll take it to the machine and we'll top stitch just like we did that side, about 1/8 of an inch or closer, all along there to finish off the zipper. Okay, so now our zipper is fully in place and it is looking really nice. We've got our quilted outer fabric on one side and we have our lining on the other side. So the next thing we're going to do is we're going to put in our pull tabs for each end of the zipper. But before we do that, we want to make sure that we open up our zipper pretty good ways. And then we're going to take the raw ends of our zipper tabs that we've made, and I try to fold them toward the side that looks the best. So now we've got all of our raw ends right there on the end, and we're actually just going to clip them over here on the edge of the bag. You want to make sure that you've got both sides of the zipper staying shut as you do this. I'm going to say it is harder than it looks. And all we're really going to do is just tack it down there, because it'll really get attached as we put the whole bag together. And then we're going to take this other one, do the same thing. Fold it so that the pretty side's the one that's showing. You've got your raw edges, and those raw edges are going to go toward the edge of the bag, where all the raw edges are right now. And we're going to pin it or clip it in place as well. And then we're just going to take it over to our machine, and we're really just going to tack it down with a very simple little stitch right across that line. Okay, so now we have our little zipper tabs sewn in place. We've got our zipper in the middle, so we know that we have not trapped it out here. I've done that before. You don't want to do that. And we are now able to cut off the extra parts of our zipper that we are not going to have as part of our bag. I recommend that you not use your good scissors to do that. And also, as you're stitching these tabs on, and as you're putting the bag together, be careful when you get near the zipper, because it can be really hard on your sewing machine needles. But you'll see we've got our cute little tabs here. And now we are ready to do some putting together. We're going to take our outer fabrics and we're going to pull them up together and set them on one side, so they're over here. And then we're going to take our lining fabrics and they're going to be facing each other over here. And we're actually going to stitch these together. So for the side that is your outer fabric, you're going to stitch straight down this line. And we're going to use a 1/4 inch seam allowance. For that. But then over here on the lining part, we're doing the same thing with one exception. We're going to leave an opening down here that we can turn the bag through with. We've also left our zipper about 2/3 of the way open. My zipper is open all the way to here. The more you open it, the better. The bigger an opening you leave down here, the easier it'll be for you to flip it back out. Especially if you've used some pretty thick fabric. This one's not, but if you made these out of canvas or duck cloth, then you want to leave a little bit of a bigger opening. Probably this is more than I need. So maybe 6 inches, yeah, but that's how big we're going to make it. So we're going to take it to the machine. We're going to stitch from here. We're going to back up and then stitch to here, back up. We're going to stitch here and back up, stitch to here and back up. And then over here, we're going to start here and back up, back stitch a little bit, and then go all the way down here to this one and also back stitch. And then come back and we're going to be ready to do the rest of the bag. One thing really quick before we go ahead and finish stitching up the sides of the bags, I did go back and add my label. If you want to add a label to your bag, before you sew the 2 ends together, the way we were getting ready to do, is the time to do it. You can still do it later, but it's much easier if you can do it when it's flat like this. All right, so now we have stitched together this end and we've left an opening here in the middle, and we've stitched together the fabric, the outer fabric, all the way down. So now we're ready to worry about the other sides. What we're gonna do is we're gonna take the fabric and we're gonna flap it like this, and we're gonna line it up so that these seams are lined up with the zipper, and the zipper is lined up with this seam. So we've got seam, zipper, zipper, seam, just like that. And you'll notice we have our opening here in the middle that we can reach through the zipper that we've left open all the way to the bottom of the bag. So we're just gonna make sure that we've got all of that lined up perfectly well. And then we're going to stitch down these sides. So you wanna make sure that as you are laying it here together to pin, what I recommend you do on this side is that you open up this seam and pin it open. You could even press it open, and that will make less bulk on that seam as we get ready to do the next step. So here we have it. It's all pinned up and ready to go. We've taken the zipper and we've lined it up with the bottom of the bag and then with the bottom of the lining so that they're all right here in the middle. I've taken the bigger Wonder Clips and clipped it in the middle with the outer fabric seam open, but you can see they're all clipped together. And what we're gonna do now is we're gonna sew along this edge, back stitch, and then sew, and then get to the other end and back stitch. And once we've done that on both ends, we'll be ready to turn our bag right side out. All right, so now we have stitched both the ends all along here, and now we're ready to turn it right side out. We're gonna go in through this opening in the back side that we left in the lining. We're gonna go all the way in there and grab a hold of the bottom of the bag and just gently pull it through. If we do rip the seam that we left, we can always repair the seam that we left open. And then you want to go through and you just want to finger poke the corners out. We'll go back with a turning tool and make sure that the corners are all poked out well in a minute. But I'm just going through with my finger and poking my finger up in there, making sure that I don't leave any corner unturned. Just kind of like that. I'm also, while I'm at it, just like that, while I'm at it, I'm checking to see if I have any seam that I didn't catch. Going all along the end, that all looks good there. Got a little string that needs to be cut. And then all along the side, and then up to this one. We're actually gonna poke it a couple of times in the next few steps. Make sure we caught all of this. I did have a little trouble here at the zipper. I broke a needle, but it seems to all look just perfect now. So now, once we've done that, we can zip it and we could be done. We could say, oh, I'm gonna close up the lining and this is gonna be my bag and we're finished. But we're not. We're actually going to box it to make it tall. So imagine this guy if he was flat, but now what we need to do to this one is add these boxed corners so that it will be tall. And before we do that, and I'm just checking it to make sure that it looks the way I wanted it to look. So now what I'm gonna do, I'm gonna open it up, I'm gonna pull out this lining, and I'm actually gonna flip it back inside out a little bit because we need to close that opening that we left in our lining, which is relatively easy to do. So what we do, we just kind of pull the lining up, and you'll see when you pull it up that it naturally wants to fold back in on itself because there's a seam on this end and there's a seam on this end. So we're gonna pull it up, kind of let it naturally tuck itself in. We're gonna put, I like to put a pin at the very end of where I need to sew to that pin to be well past where the opening begins. And then I just kind of put a couple of clips in there. And remember, this is in the bottom of your bag, so probably nobody's gonna notice it. There are people who will hand stitch it with a whip stitch that makes it where the stitch doesn't even show. I don't do that because it's the bottom of the bag. I don't think anybody cares what that looks like down there. I know I don't, so I'm just hooking it together with a couple of the little clips. And again, I've got some threads I'm gonna stick in there. And then I've got a pin that's gonna demark how far I need to stitch. Now, you could, and I've definitely done this before, it depends on the fabric. I think this flannel fabric is gonna hide that stitch really well. But you could stitch the whole line, like from corner to corner, but we don't really need to. So we're gonna take it to the machine, and we're gonna stitch from straight pin to close our opening. And then we'll be ready to box the machine, or to box the bag. Okay, so now the bottom of the bag is stitched closed. Now we're ready to stick it in there and really use our little turning tool to make sure that we've poked all the corners out. So I'm just sticking it back in there with my fingers first, and I'll show you what it looks like because this lining is sewn in there. It's permanent, and now it's closed. So it's all one beautiful cohesive piece. And like I said, this bag is finished right now, but we want to make ours boxed. So in order to do that, we're actually going to do some work on the corners. But before we do that, we're going to take this handy dandy little turning stick, and they make lots of these. This came in a bag of polyfill for stuffed animals, and it is what I use always. And I'm just taking it and I am poking in that corner so that I know there's no fabric left unfolded in there, because we are actually going to be cutting these corners off. And we want both the lining and the outer fabric to be turned out exactly the same. So once we've done that, we're gonna go ahead and zip it back up. And I will tell you, there are lots and lots of ways for us to box these corners. And I've done many, many of them. But the way that we're going to do it tonight is, I think it's one of the easiest ways, but it does require a little bit of extra sewing. And what we're gonna do first is we're gonna unzip it. We're going, and you can decide how boxed you want your bag to be. You could make it boxed so that it's 2.5 inches and it ends up about like this big. You can make it bigger box so that it is taller. You can make it less boxed so that it's a shorter bag, maybe only this tall or this tall. You can do it any way you want. The way that I have been doing it with these bags, to kind of make them a uniform amount of boxed, is I have been using this ruler that is a little square ruler, and you go down to, we're going to be working on this corner and this corner. Look, this tab is in the middle of them. So the first thing that we're gonna do is we're gonna come over here and we're gonna use this ruler. We're gonna lay it down flat. Now you can go and press this down press down the side so that you have a really clear idea of what the back line is. I'm just going to finger press it. And then I'm going to come up here and I'm going to lay this whole corner open. See how I've laid it flat? That's all I'm doing. I'm laying it flat. I'm making sure that the back part is on that line that I just finger pressed. And I'm going to lay it down flat because I want 1, 2, 3, 4. I really want 4 inches across. So when I'm finished setting it up, I've got I go up a 1/2 inch, a whole inch, and a 1/2 inch. So it's 2 inches up. And acrossways, it's 4 inches from 1, 2, 3, 4. See how it comes to the corner? That's where I'm going to draw that line. And really, you can do this any way you want. The trick is going to be that you make all 4 corners the same size. So I'm going to draw that line, and I'm going to put 2 clips in it so that it'll stay exactly the way I measured it. And then I'm going to go ahead and do this corner. So I'm going to take the corner. I'll show you again how we do that. I take the corner and I lay it down flat, making sure that I've got this seam lined up with that part that I finger pressed, which I need to really redo. Finger press that really good there. And then I lay it flat so that that seam is against that flat part. Lay it down on the table completely flat. So we've got this little tab in the middle. We've already done this side. We're going to lay it down flat with this line right in the middle. And we're going to take our little ruler and we're going to make our ruler be 2 inches from the peak down to the middle, 2 inches. So I have a whole inch, a 1/2 inch, and a 1/2 inch. At the same time, I want to have 4 inches across the bottom. I'm going to kind of move it a little bit so that I can count 4 inches. Again, keeping it 1, 1/2, 1/2, keeping it 2 inches down. So I've got 1, 2, 3, 4. I'm going to move it just a little bit like that. 1, 2, 3, 4. And now I'm ready to, because it's 4 inches across here. 1, 2, 3, 4. And now I'm going to draw my line. This is great. This is a great pen. When you put heat to it from an iron, it disappears. And then I'm just going to put 2 little clips in there. And I'm going to go to the machine and I'm going to stitch right along that line. And over here, same thing, I'm going to stitch right along that line. So now you can see it's starting to look like it's all the way finished, right? So the next thing we're going to do is we're going to cut off these flaps that we sewed, and we're going to cut them as close to the line as we can, like about 1/8 of an inch from there, because then we're going to turn it inside out and we're going to close that seam from the inside. So the next thing we're going to do again is we're going to take our scissors and we're going to cut really close to that stitch line. I'll show you. Like, the closer we get, the neater this looks, because the more easily we'll be able to make it look finished with our French seam that we're going to sew. So we're going to cut it all the way down like that, all 4 corners. Here's what it's looking like after we've cut off the little flaps. Now what we need to do is go back from the inside and stitch this on the inside so that it'll be a closed seam on the outside. So we're almost finished with our cute little bag. Now what we need to do, and this is the final step, and then we're all we have left to do is make our little zipper pull and we're finished. and we're going to want to go through and trim all the threads. But what we need to do now is from the inside, I've turned it inside out. And from the inside, we're going to take each of these boxed corners and we're going to roll it down so that it's a really tight seam that we're going to then stitch. And when we do this, it makes those on the outside that right now is not finished. See, we've got a raw seam there, but that will be sewn inside of this seam. It's a lot of fabric, so you want to take your time, and you want to make sure that you want to get as close to the seam as you can, because you don't want extra bulk and you don't want to lose space because you made your seam way over here. However, if you don't go far enough over, you won't close that seam in. And that's not the end of the world either. If you get through and there's still part of the seam showing, then you go back in and you do go a little bit deeper in. But we're gonna pin up each one of the corners, and then we're gonna go in and we're gonna stitch from here to here so that we close that seam on the outside. Easy peasy. Let me show you a little bit of troubleshooting that I'm doing, and I don't always include. So where I put my label, which is where I always put it, you can see on this bag, that's right where it is. It's right by the zipper, down about an inch over and an inch up from the bottom, but that didn't work this time. So I am going to just unpick that, take that label out, and then I'll put it somewhere else after I'm finished. Once you have sewn all of those seams, I keep finding little threads that I need to clip. Once you've done that, then your bag that is still turned inside out, you should go through and try to clip the threads because there's going to be lots of them. These are lots of seams. But now it looks like this. You've got 4 corners that are closed from the inside, but they're also, hopefully, closed from the outside. So now we're ready to turn our bag right side out, which is like the very best part of the whole project. Now what I did is I stitched each corner. I flipped it to make sure I'd gotten all of the seam in there. Sometimes there's a little tiny bit left that you have to go back and restitch again, but you've gone to all this trouble. You want it to be perfect. And as long as you still haven't seamed everything up, you still have the opportunity to troubleshoot the problems that you might have. All right, so then once we get all of those turned out, I'm actually going to take my little turner and I'm going to poke all those corners again, because now we have a very lot of fabric in them. So it's really easy for there to be a corner that gets left unturned if you're not vigilant. And so once we've done that, and you're going to want to go around and check it, make sure that you didn't miss anything. I will tell you that on my lining, I'll show you, when I was making the corners, I discovered, so this lining looks good. Everything is the way that I want it to be. But on this end down here, there was a little bit of raw fabric showing. So I went back in and I made the seam a little bit bigger. So that took care of that problem. I think one of the differences between being a beginner and maybe having done it a little while is that you think, oh wait, I could probably fix that. Now, we have one thing left to do. I have 2 because I need to put my label back on it. But the last thing we have to do is make a cute little zipper pull for our end of our bag, and then we're going to be finished. Now, in order to do that, all we're going to do is I'm going to trim this down and make it maybe 1.5 inches wide. I'm going to keep the length. I like that length. And then once I have trimmed it down, I'm actually going to take it to the ironing board and I'm going to fold one side over to the middle like this. I'm going to take the other one and I'm just going to barely fold it like this, and I'm going to iron that. And then I'm going to fold that over onto the middle. I'll take it to the machine. I'll stitch it down the middle and down each side, and then I'll show you what we do after that. After I've taken the little strap and kind of folded it in on itself and stitched it up both ends, and sometimes I do this and I have to redo it because it's still too wide to actually fit in the zipper pull, but this is really flexible flannel that I think is going to easily fit in there. And what we're going to do when we get it in there is we're going to fold it over on itself and then stitch it together. Come on, don't make me a liar. Got it in there. We'll trim all the edges off, and then we just pull it through till it's all the way through. And then we're going to go over to the machine and we're just going to stitch it, and then we'll just trim off the edge. And then we'll have a really cute little zipper pull that actually matches the lining. There's the lining. And now we're finished. The last thing that I did was I went back to this zipper pull and I added some of this fray check to it. That'll just keep those cotton fibers from continuing to fray down there on the bottom. I use that anytime I use cotton webbing or flannel, some of the fleeces that fray really badly. You'll also see that I added my little label on there. But now we've got this adorable little makeup bag that can be versatile. You could use it for your toiletries, your makeup, going on a trip. You could put toys in it for a little kid. It could be a little miniature diaper bag if you're running out and you only need a few things. And not only is it completely lined and very usable, let's just look inside there one last time. Got this completely all seams closed lining. But in addition to all of that, you can make as many versions as you want, and that is what I plan to do. This is the outer fabric, and that is the lining. And here's another one, outer lining, inner lining. And this one, this as the outer fabric, and this as the lining, and this one will be the small, because I think this will just make an adorable, about 2/3 the size of the one that we made today. I hope you learned something from our tutorial today, and if you do try this project, I hope you'll message me and let me know how it turned out. It was nice spending some time with you. I'll see you again soon.